There's a certain stillness that comes in the late hours of the night, a kind of quiet that you can't quite touch during the day. The world seems softer. The demands of the day loosen their grip, and for a moment, there's space. In that space, you can hear something you've been missing. Not the noise of the outside world, but the voice within yourself. Tonight, we begin a journey together. Not the kind of journey measured in miles or marked by signposts, but an inward one, into the landscapes of thought, wisdom, and the simple act of being alive. This is not a lecture. It's not a rush to reach some great conclusion. It's an unfolding, like sitting beside a slow-moving river and watching the reflections ripple over the water. This time is about letting the mind drift, softly, calmly, while still holding a thread of intention. That intention is simple: to rest while thinking deeply, and to think deeply while resting. You may fall asleep along the way, or you may stay awake, listening, reflecting. Either is perfectly fine. This isn't about keeping pace. It's about allowing what you hear to gently work its way into your thoughts. The world you and I live in can be fast, loud, and restless. Our attention is pulled in 100 different directions, most of them urgent, few of them important. But here, in this moment, nothing is urgent. There is nowhere to go, nothing to prove. We are stepping away from the constant push and pull and choosing to let the mind settle. It's a choice we rarely make, and that's exactly why it's so powerful. Throughout the hours ahead, we'll walk through ideas that have been carried across centuries, ideas from Taoist sages, Stoic philosophers, and existential thinkers. We'll hear the voices of those who lived in different times, under different skies, and yet wrestled with the same questions we still ask today. How do we live well? How do we find peace in a chaotic world? How do we carry meaning through the uncertainty that life always brings? But this isn't about memorizing philosophy. It's about feeling it. It's about letting words and ideas wash over you slowly, as if they were spoken directly to you, in the quiet of a dimly lit room with no one else around. Some ideas might spark curiosity. Others might stir something deep you've long forgotten. And some will simply sit in the background like a faint melody, shaping your thoughts without you even noticing. The key is to give yourself permission to simply be here. There's nothing you need to do to earn this moment. No list to check off before you can allow yourself to rest. This is the beginning of a long, steady walk through the inner world, a walk that doesn't demand you to push, but invites you to notice. So take a slow breath, let your shoulders drop, feel the weight of your body wherever you're sitting or lying down. With each exhale, imagine that you're releasing a little of the tension you've been carrying, not all at once, but enough to make space. Space for thought, space for peace, space for something ancient and timeless to find its way back into your awareness. As we move forward, keep in mind that this is not about changing yourself tonight. It's about remembering what you already carry inside, the capacity for calm, for clarity, for depth. That's the ground we'll walk upon for the rest of this journey. And now, we begin. There's a passage in the Tao Te Ching that says, "The highest good is like water. Water gives life to all things and does not compete. It flows to the lowest places that others disdain. In this, it comes near to the Tao." You can read that line 100 times and still discover something new each time, because it doesn't just describe water, it describes a way of living. Taoism teaches that there's a power in not forcing life to bend to your will. It's not weakness, it's not passivity, it's trust. trust that the river of life already knows its course, and that sometimes the wisest thing you can do is step out of its way. We live in a culture that glorifies control, plans, strategies, deadlines, everything aimed at shaping the future into what we think it should be. And while discipline and vision have their place, the Taoist way reminds us that control is often an illusion. You can make the perfect plan only to watch it dissolve in a single unexpected moment. You can push and push at a door, not realizing it opens in the other direction. The harder you force, the more resistance you create, not just in the world, but within yourself. Taoism invites you to notice that resistance, to feel it in your body, and to see that letting go isn't losing, it's aligning. Imagine a river winding through the land. It doesn't argue with the rocks in its way. It curves, flows around them, and eventually wears them smooth. If you try to dam it completely, the water will rise and find another path. Life is the same. When we meet obstacles, our instinct is often to fight, to push, to break through by force. But the Taoist path suggests something different. Find where the flow naturally wants to go and move with it. This isn't about giving up on your goals. It's about realizing that the path to them might not be straight, and that detours can lead to greater harmony than brute force ever could. There's a subtle strength in this approach. Think about the people you've met who seem unshakable, not because they control everything, but because they aren't rattled when things change. They adapt without losing their center. They don't waste energy wishing reality was different. They work with what's in front of them. This is the essence of Wu Wei, a central Taoist principle often translated as effortless action. It's not laziness, it's not inaction, it's action so perfectly attuned to the moment that it feels natural, without friction, like a skilled musician improvising or a master craftsman letting the grain of the wood guide their hands. If you look back at your own life, you might see moments when trying harder made things worse, and moments when stepping back allowed things to fall into place on their own. It's not about fate doing all the work for you. It's about knowing when your effort serves the flow and when it fights it. The Taoist way is to listen deeply, to sense the current, and to trust it enough to let it carry you where you need to be. Tonight, as you sit with these thoughts, notice where in your life you've been pushing too hard. Notice the tension it creates in your body, the strain in your mind. Ask yourself, what would happen if I released the grip, even slightly? If I allowed life to show me another way forward? Often the answer isn't in doing more, it's in doing less, but with greater harmony. And that's the quiet, gentle power Taoism offers, the ability to move through the world like water, soft, flexible, and unstoppable. There's a line from Epictetus that says, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." At first it sounds almost too simple, but when you really sit with it, you realize it contains the blueprint for emotional freedom in a chaotic world. The Stoics understood that control over external events is minimal, sometimes non-existent. The economy will rise and fall. People will praise you one day and criticize you the next. A plan you've worked on for years can unravel in a single phone call. The only constant you truly own is your response, and that's where real power lies. When chaos strikes, the untrained mind lunges into reactivity. Anger flares. Fear tightens its grip. We start fighting ghosts, imagining every worst-case scenario, replaying past mistakes, grasping at explanations. But the Stoic approach begins with one question. What here is within my control? Everything else is noise. That's not indifference, it's strategy. because if you waste energy on what you can't influence, you weaken your ability to act where it truly matters. Marcus Aurelius lived this truth under relentless pressure. As Emperor of Rome, he faced wars, plagues, betrayals, and political instability. But in his private writings, he reminded himself again and again, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This wasn't naive optimism, it was survival. A calm mind can see clearly. A reactive mind only sees threats. And in a world that's constantly throwing storms your way, clarity is your compass. Think about the last time something small completely threw off your mood, a rude comment, a delay, a sudden change of plans. In the grand scheme, it might not have mattered, but because your mind reacted instantly, it gained more weight than it deserved. The Stoics would urge you to insert a pause, a mental space between stimulus and response. That space is where choice lives, and choice is what turns chaos into order. This doesn't mean ignoring injustice or pretending nothing bothers you. It means channeling your energy where it has impact. If something can be changed, take action without resentment. If it can't, accept it without bitterness. The calm this creates isn't weakness, it's stability. People who master this become anchors in turbulent waters. Others are drawn to them, not because they never feel stress, but because they never let stress own them. You can train this daily. Start small. The next time something frustrates you, don't immediately vent or complain. Step back and ask, will this matter a week from now? A year from now? Most of the time, the answer is no. And in those moments when the answer is yes, respond with deliberate action, not emotional reaction. Over time, this becomes second nature, and you'll find that the world's noise no longer dictates your peace. In the end, Stoic calm isn't about living in a bubble. It's about walking into the chaos with steady hands and a clear mind, knowing that while you can't control the storm, you can always control the ship. And that makes all the difference. There's a question that has echoed through the minds of philosophers, poets, and ordinary people alike for centuries. What does it all mean? This is the existentialist's question, the one that refuses easy answers, the one that keeps returning in quiet moments of solitude. When the world feels uncertain, when the future is blurry and the past feels heavier than you expected, it's natural to search for a reason, a grand purpose that ties everything together. But existentialist thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus challenge the idea that meaning is handed down to us from somewhere else. They suggested that meaning isn't found, it's made. And that realization, while daunting, is deeply liberating. Camus famously wrote about the myth of Sisyphus, condemned to push a boulder up a hill for eternity, only to watch it roll back down. To most, this is a picture of futility, but Camus flipped it. He suggested that Sisyphus could be happy, because even though he couldn't change his fate, he could choose his attitude toward it. Life may not come with a pre-written script, but that absence of fixed meaning is exactly what gives us the freedom to write our own. The universe might not tell you why you're here, but that means the responsibility and the privilege of defining your purpose is yours alone. Existentialism doesn't sugarcoat life's uncertainty. It tells you plainly, you will never have perfect clarity about why things happen the way they do. You won't always know what's around the corner, and you will, one day, leave this life without all your questions answered. But here's the shift. It asks you to stop waiting for certainty before you live fully. To act, to love, to create, to commit, not because you have the guarantee of meaning, but because you decide that this moment matters. Think about it. So much of our hesitation in life comes from waiting for the right conditions. We tell ourselves we'll start pursuing that dream when we understand exactly where it will lead. We'll open up to someone when we know for sure they won't hurt us. We'll take a leap when we're certain it will work out. But the truth is, that certainty never comes. If you want a life of richness and depth, you have to choose in the midst of uncertainty. That's the paradox. Your purpose is built through action, not clarity. The existentialist's question isn't just a philosophical exercise. It's an invitation. It's asking you, in a world that might never give you the final answer, what will you choose to make important? Will you spend your time chasing some external validation of meaning, or will you decide that meaning lives in the way you show up right now, in the conversations you have, the risks you take, the kindness you give without any guarantee it will be returned? And here's where this ties back to peace. When you accept that uncertainty is not a flaw in life, but its defining feature, the fear of not knowing begins to fade. You stop treating ambiguity like an enemy and start treating it like a canvas. You realize you're not here to solve the entire mystery. You're here to live it. Meaning, in the existential sense, isn't found in a single answer you'll stumble upon one day. It's found in the daily act of deciding who you want to be in the face of uncertainty. And that's a decision only you can make. Letting go sounds simple, but it's one of the most challenging things you'll ever do, because it requires you to loosen your grip not just on situations, but on the illusions you've built around them. We cling to expectations because they give us a false sense of security. We convince ourselves that if we can predict the outcome, we can control our peace. But life has a way of reminding us that even our best plans are fragile in the face of reality. The Stoics understood this well. Epictetus taught that the more you tie your peace to things outside your control, the more you set yourself up for suffering. The art of letting go is not about apathy. It's about redirecting your energy from what you wish life would be to what life is right now. Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop making your well-being dependent on whether things go according to your script. Imagine holding a rope tightly while it's being pulled away from you. The tighter you grip, the more it burns. At some point, the pain is no longer from losing the rope, but from refusing to release it. In life, the rope might be a relationship, a job, a long-cherished plan, or an identity you've outgrown. The burn is the friction between reality and your resistance to it. And the moment you loosen your grip, not because you've stopped loving, but because you've stopped demanding, you create space for healing and new possibilities. This is where control becomes the central question. The need for control is often fear wearing the mask of order. We tell ourselves we're just being responsible or ensuring the best outcome, but beneath that is usually a deep discomfort with uncertainty. When you practice letting go, you're not just freeing the external situation, you're freeing yourself from the belief that your safety depends on predictability. And here's the paradox. When you stop forcing outcomes, you often find that life flows more smoothly. The Taoist perspective teaches that water shapes rock not by force, but by yielding, adapting, and persisting. You too can move with life instead of against it. Think about the moments in your life when you've been most at peace. Were they the times you micromanaged every detail, or the times you trusted yourself to handle whatever came next? Letting go is a vote of confidence in your own resilience. It says, even if this doesn't turn out the way I hoped, I will still be whole. I will still find meaning. That is the foundation of inner strength. Not getting everything you want, but knowing you can adapt when you don't. So ask yourself, what are you gripping so tightly right now that it's burning you? Is it an expectation of how someone should act? Is it a belief about where you should be in life by now? Is it the need for an apology, recognition, or closure that may never come? If the answer is yes, then maybe your peace doesn't depend on holding on, but on letting go. Release the need for the outcome to match your vision and watch how much lighter you feel. Stillness is not the absence of life. It's the deep undercurrent beneath all the noise, the place where your mind finally has the space to breathe. In a world addicted to motion, stillness feels almost rebellious. We are taught to measure our worth by our output, our schedules filled so tightly that silence becomes something awkward to escape from rather than something to seek. But the truth is, your mind is not a machine. It cannot endlessly process without renewal. Stillness is the space in which your thoughts settle enough for you to see clearly, like a pond that becomes clear only when the ripples fade. Your mind reveals its depth only when you stop stirring the surface. When we think of nourishment, we often think of food, water, or air, essentials for the body, but the mind also has essentials: focus, reflection, and quiet. Without them, our thoughts become scattered, reactive, and fragile. Stillness strengthens you because it creates a pause between what happens to you and how you respond. This is the space where wisdom grows. The Stoics knew this intimately. Marcus Aurelius, despite leading Rome through war and plague, wrote nightly in his journals as a way to create inner silence. He understood that stillness wasn't luxury, it was survival. Silence does not mean the world around you has stopped. It means you've learned to create space inside yourself where outside chaos cannot reach. The discipline is in choosing not to fill every pause with distraction. Many people fear stillness because it strips away the noise that hides their inner discomfort. In silence, you hear your own doubts, your unanswered questions, your unhealed wounds. But that's also why stillness is powerful. It forces you to face what you've been avoiding, and in that confrontation lies growth. Think of stillness like sharpening a blade. You don't sharpen a sword in the middle of battle. You step away, tend to it, and return prepared. Your mind is the same. Without moments of stillness, you rush into life with a dull edge, easily worn down by every problem you face. But when you practice stillness through meditation, slow walks without a phone, or simply sitting quietly, you return to life sharper, calmer, and more intentional. And here's the paradox. The more you embrace stillness, the more effective you become in action. People often mistake constant movement for productivity, but a restless mind makes poor decisions. A still mind can cut through the noise, see the heart of the matter, and act with precision. As the Taoists teach, the most powerful action often comes from the deepest stillness, like an archer who holds steady before releasing the arrow. Ask yourself, when was the last time you sat in stillness without reaching for a distraction? What might you hear if you let the noise fade? In a world that pulls you outward, stillness is the practice of returning inward, because the most important conversations you will ever have are the ones you have with yourself. Impermanence is the silent teacher that walks beside us from the moment we are born, though we spend much of our lives pretending it doesn't exist. We cling to moments as if they can be frozen, to people as if they will always be there, to identities as if they will never shift. Yet change is not the exception, it is the rule. Everything you have ever known, every feeling you have ever had, has passed through your life like clouds across the sky. Some changes arrive slowly, like the seasons. Others strike suddenly, like a storm. But all of them, without fail, carry the same message. Nothing stays the same, and that's not a tragedy. It's the rhythm of life itself. When you fight impermanence, you suffer twice. First, from the natural pain of loss or change, and second, from the resistance you build against it. We hold on, we replay old memories. We refuse to accept endings because they threaten the illusions we've built about control. But what if, instead of resisting, we learned to see impermanence as a form of guidance? The Stoics did. They practiced memento mori, remembering that life, like all things, is finite. Not to depress themselves, but to sharpen their gratitude for the present moment. Knowing something will not last makes it more valuable, not less. Think about the most beautiful sunset you've ever seen. Part of its magic is knowing it will fade. You don't try to hold the sun in place, you simply watch, appreciate, and let it go. Life asks us to do the same with people, experiences, and even versions of ourselves we've outgrown. This is not detachment in the cold sense. It's love without chains. It's holding life with open hands instead of a clenched fist. Accepting impermanence does not mean giving up ambition or desire. It means moving through life with the awareness that every achievement, every relationship, every stage you're in is temporary. This awareness makes you more intentional. You stop postponing joy because you realize there will never be a perfect moment to start living. You stop delaying forgiveness because you understand the chance to make peace might vanish tomorrow. You stop taking people for granted because you know they too are passing through. Buddhist philosophy describes this truth as anicca, the constant state of flux that underlies existence. In nature, we see it everywhere. Flowers bloom and wither, rivers change their course, mountains erode, and even stars burn out. Yet we, with our short human lifespans, are often shocked when things change for us. But impermanence is not the enemy. It is the proof that life is alive. If nothing ever changed, there would be no growth, no possibility, no new beginnings. The key is to shift from fearing change to flowing with it. When life takes something away, it is also making space for something else to enter. When an ending arrives, it's often because a part of you is ready to step into a new season, whether you realize it or not. The pain of change is real, but so is the gift it carries, the opportunity to evolve. Ask yourself, if you knew everything in your life right now was temporary, how would you treat it? What would you savor more deeply? And what would you let go of more easily? Because the truth is, you already live in that reality. Impermanence isn't coming someday. It's here, now, shaping you in every breath you take. The choice is whether to fight it or to learn from it. There is a certain kind of strength that doesn't shout, doesn't need to prove itself, and doesn't waver when life tries to shake it. This is the strength of the inner fortress, a place within you that no one else can breach, no matter how turbulent the outside world becomes. In ancient philosophy, particularly in Stoicism, this inner stronghold was seen as the only true security a person could have. Walls can crumble, wealth can vanish, relationships can end, but your inner stability, if cultivated, remains untouched. Building this fortress begins with understanding that your emotions are yours to command. This doesn't mean suppressing them or pretending they don't exist. It means mastering the art of responding instead of reacting. When you react, you hand the keys of your mind to the outside world, allowing anyone or anything to dictate your mood. When you respond, you pause, you assess, and you act from clarity, not impulse. This is the difference between being ruled by life and ruling your inner domain. Think of Marcus Aurelius writing in his meditations while facing war, betrayal, and loss. His empire could be under siege, yet he wrote of maintaining a mind free from disturbance. That is the essence of the fortress. It is not built on denying reality, but on accepting it and choosing how you meet it. And here's the paradox. The stronger your inner walls, the more open you can be to the world. Because you are not easily shaken, you can face chaos without fear of collapse. To construct this mental stronghold, you must lay the foundation with self-awareness. Ask yourself, what triggers my anger, fear, or insecurity? Which criticisms pierce me most deeply, and why? Awareness is the blueprint. Without it, you build blind, patching walls where cracks appear instead of designing something enduring. The next step is discipline, the daily practice of strengthening the mind through challenges, reflection, and deliberate choices. Discipline is the mortar that binds the bricks of your stability together. Resilience is another essential material in this fortress. Life will inevitably strike at you through failure, rejection, or unforeseen loss. Without resilience, each blow knocks loose a stone from your walls. But when you meet adversity as a teacher rather than an enemy, you rebuild stronger each time. Resilience doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means you recover without letting the damage define you. Guarding the gates of your fortress means being intentional about what you allow to enter. Just as you wouldn't let an enemy army walk through your gates, you must not let destructive thoughts, toxic relationships, or meaningless distractions occupy your mental space. This is not about isolation, it's about sovereignty. The people and ideas you admit into your inner world should strengthen you, not weaken you. But a fortress is not only about defense, it's also a place of rest. Within those walls, you find stillness, reflection, and clarity. It's where you return to remember who you are when the noise of the world tries to make you forget. When you live from that place, the storms outside lose their power over you. The criticisms, the setbacks, the chaos. They may rattle the gates, but they cannot breach the walls. Ask yourself, if all the noise stopped right now, what would remain in the quiet? Would it be peace or panic? That answer tells you the current state of your fortress. And the beauty of it is this: you can start reinforcing it today, brick by brick, choice by choice, until it stands unshakable no matter what comes. There's a deep sense of peace that comes from knowing you are living in full alignment with your values, a kind of quiet confidence that no praise can inflate and no criticism can deflate. Acting according to your values without compromise is not just about making the right choices when the world is watching. It's about the choices you make in the unseen moments, when it would be easier to bend, to please, to take the shortcut. The true measure of your character is found in those moments, and the alignment between what you say you believe and how you actually live is the foundation of self-respect. Living in alignment starts with clarity. You cannot act on your values if you haven't taken the time to define them. Too many people adopt the values handed to them by family, culture, or society without ever questioning them. And then they wonder why their life feels disconnected and hollow. If you haven't yet, sit with yourself and ask, what do I stand for? What principles would I never trade, even if they cost me something? These aren't abstract ideals. They should be concrete enough to guide real decisions. For example, if you value honesty, that means refusing to lie, even when it would save you from embarrassment or loss. If you value compassion, That means extending empathy even when it's inconvenient. The challenge, of course, is that life will constantly test these convictions. Opportunities will arise that look enticing, but require you to betray something essential. People will pressure you to adjust your stance just this once, for the sake of harmony, profit, or approval. This is where the strength of alignment is forged, not when the choice is easy, but when holding the line means standing alone. The Stoics understood this well. They believed it was better to suffer for living virtuously than to prosper through compromise. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the cost of betraying your own nature is far greater than any external loss. The rewards of living in alignment are subtle but profound. You sleep better at night because you are not at war with yourself. You walk into any room without fear of being exposed because there is nothing hidden. Your actions match your principles, and perhaps most importantly, you trust yourself. That trust is the seed from which courage grows, because when you know you won't abandon yourself, you can face anything. Practically, alignment requires constant self-audit. Every decision, big or small, is a chance to ask, does this honor my principles, or am I trying to avoid discomfort? Am I being guided by what's right or by what's easy? This is where discipline and awareness meet. The moment you feel tempted to rationalize a compromise, pause. Ask yourself if the temporary gain is worth the long-term erosion of your self-respect. Almost always the answer is no. There is a kind of power that comes from this unwavering commitment. It attracts people's respect, even from those who may disagree with you. But more importantly, it gives you respect for yourself. And that is something no one else can give or take away. So I'll leave you with this question. If you stripped away all the noise, all the pressure, all the expectations, would the life you're living still feel like yours? Or have you allowed small compromises to slowly push you away from who you truly are? Every day is a chance to step back into alignment. The sooner you do, the sooner your life begins to feel fully your own. There's a quiet magic in the present moment that most people miss because they're too busy chasing the next one. We rush through life as if we're trying to get to some grand finale, not realizing that the fullness of life is happening right here, right now. Mindfulness isn't about escaping to a mountaintop or sitting cross-legged for hours. It's about learning to be awake in the middle of your ordinary day. It's about tasting your coffee instead of gulping it while scrolling your phone. It's about actually listening when someone speaks instead of preparing your reply. The present moment is the only place life exists, and yet it's the place we abandon most often. When we're not in the present, we're usually trapped in two places: the past, where regret lives, or the future, where anxiety waits. The past tells us stories of what should have been, and the future tempts us with what could go wrong. Both rob us of the clarity and peace that's only available now. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus reminded us that we have power only over our thoughts and actions in the present moment. The rest is illusion. Mindfulness, then, isn't some mystical state. It's the practice of returning again and again to what's in front of you, without judgment and without hurry. The transformation happens when you realize that every moment, no matter how ordinary, is an opportunity to be fully alive. Washing the dishes can be a meditation. Walking to your car can be a chance to feel the air on your skin. Even moments of discomfort, waiting in line, stuck in traffic, can become a lesson in patience and presence. This shift in perspective changes how you experience everything. It turns life from something you rush through into something you inhabit. Practically, you can start small. Choose one ordinary activity each day and give it your full attention. Notice the textures, the sounds, the small details you usually overlook. When your mind wanders, gently bring it back, not with frustration, but with curiosity. Over time, you'll find that this simple habit starts bleeding into the rest of your life. You'll speak more slowly because you're actually considering your words. You'll notice the way light moves across a room. You'll stop missing the moments that make life worth living. The beauty of the present moment is that it's enough. You don't have to fix it, improve it, or rush to the next one. And in learning to rest in it, you begin to understand something profound. The richness you've been chasing is already here. It always has been. You just have to be still enough to notice. So here's a question to carry with you. How many moments of your day are you truly living, and how many are you letting slip away while you wait for the real life to begin? Because this, right now, is the real thing. And once it's gone, it doesn't come back. There's a certain kind of courage that doesn't come from defiance, rebellion, or shouting your truth from the rooftops. It comes from the quiet decision to be exactly who you are, without shrinking, without pretending, without editing yourself to fit the expectations of others. In a world that rewards conformity and punishes difference, authenticity can feel risky. It can cost you approval, friendships, even opportunities. But the price of not being yourself is far greater. You trade your peace for acceptance, your identity for belonging, and slowly you disappear in your own life. The reason so many people struggle with authenticity is simple. We've been taught from an early age to adapt, to read the room, to become what others need us to be. While adaptability is a strength, it becomes a prison when it's constant. Over time, you lose touch with your own desires, your own boundaries, your own truth. The courage to be yourself means reversing that conditioning. It means asking not, "Who do they want me to be?" but "Who am I really?" when no one is watching. And when you find that answer, it means having the strength to live it openly. Philosophers throughout history have echoed this idea in their own way. The Stoics believed that a life worth living is one lived in harmony with your nature. The Existentialists saw authenticity as the only way to face life's inherent uncertainty. And modern psychology confirms what they knew. When you live out of alignment with who you are, you feel anxious, restless, and empty, no matter how polished your life looks from the outside. Authenticity, then, isn't a luxury. It's mental oxygen. Without it, you suffocate slowly. The hardest part is that being yourself will sometimes invite resistance. People who benefited from your compliance may resent your independence. Some will misunderstand your choices. Others will try to convince you that you've changed, as if growth were betrayal. This is where courage matters most. Being authentic doesn't mean being reckless or insensitive. It means telling the truth in your actions, even when it's inconvenient. It's choosing the discomfort of honesty over the comfort of pleasing. Start with small acts of truth. Say no when you mean no. Express your real opinion in a conversation instead of nodding along. Wear what feels like you, not what's trending. Over time, these small acts become a way of being, and the fear of disapproval fades. You realize something powerful. The people who matter most will respect you for your truth, not your performance. And those who can't accept the real you, they were never your people to begin with. The reward for this courage is profound. You no longer have to carry the weight of constant performance. You attract people, work, and opportunities that align with your real values. You build a life that fits you instead of forcing yourself to fit life. And most importantly, you can look in the mirror without feeling like a stranger. So ask yourself, where in your life are you still hiding, and what would happen if you showed up as your true self? Because in the end, the approval you've been chasing will never feel as good as the freedom of being unapologetically you. Pain is a strange teacher. It doesn't arrive with a smile or a friendly hand. It often crashes into your life uninvited, tearing apart the routines, relationships, or illusions you thought were unshakable. In the moment, it feels like destruction. But with time, if you choose to look closely, you begin to see it for what it truly is. A forge. A place where your character is melted, reshaped, and strengthened. Pain strips away what is unnecessary. It forces you to see what you've been avoiding, and in its own uncompromising way, it offers lessons you couldn't have learned in comfort. The great thinkers understood this paradox. Epictetus, born into slavery, endured hardships that would break most people, yet he saw suffering not as a curse, but as an opportunity to exercise virtue. Viktor Frankl, surviving the concentration camps, wrote that those who found meaning in their suffering could endure almost anything. These are not romanticized tales of hardship. They are testaments to a truth you can't learn in theory. When life leaves you no choice but to face what hurts, you discover depths of strength you didn't know you had. Most people try to escape pain. They drown it in distractions, numb it with temporary pleasures, or deny it altogether. But pain ignored doesn't disappear. It waits. And when it returns, it often does so louder, more destructive, and harder to face. The transformation begins when you stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" That shift changes pain from something that happens to you into something that happens for you. Pain teaches humility. You realize you're not invincible, and that's liberating. It teaches gratitude. Suddenly, small moments of peace feel like treasures. It teaches empathy. Your own suffering opens your heart to the struggles of others. And most of all, it teaches resilience. Once you've stood in the fire and survived, the smaller storms of life no longer shake you the same way. The process isn't quick. Wisdom doesn't arrive on the first day of hardship. At first, it's messy. You'll resist, you'll break down, you'll feel lost. But every time you choose to face it rather than flee, you take another step toward growth. And one day, you'll look back at a moment that once felt like the end, and you'll realize it was the beginning of something far stronger. So the next time pain comes knocking, don't slam the door in its face. Let it in, sit with it, ask it questions, because buried within that discomfort is the blueprint for the person you are meant to become. The choice is yours. Will you let suffering crush you, or will you let it carve you into something unbreakable? Gratitude is not just a polite thank you for the good things in life. It's a way of seeing. It's the decision to notice what's already here instead of constantly chasing what's missing. When you live in a world that's always telling you to want more, to be more, to achieve more, gratitude becomes an act of quiet rebellion. It's the voice inside that says, "I have enough in this moment," and truly means it. The Stoics knew that abundance isn't measured by the size of your possessions, but by the fullness of your appreciation. Seneca wrote that it is not the man who has too little who is poor, but the one who craves more. Think about that. If you can find contentment with the little you have, you've already escaped the endless cycle of wanting. And when you break free from that cycle, you see the world differently. A cup of coffee in the morning isn't just a drink. It's warmth, aroma, and a small moment of peace. A conversation with a friend isn't just passing time. It's connection, trust, and shared humanity. But gratitude isn't always easy. In hard times, it can feel like a luxury you can't afford. That's why it's a practice, not a mood. You have to choose it intentionally, especially when life isn't going your way. Gratitude in good times is pleasant. Gratitude in hardship is transformative. When you can look at your struggles and still find something to appreciate, a lesson learned, a moment of kindness, a strength you didn't know you had, you turn adversity into wisdom. One way to cultivate this is to make it a daily ritual. At the end of each day, pause and ask yourself, what went right today? Not what went wrong, not what's missing, just what went right. At first, you might only find one thing. That's enough. Over time, your mind will learn to scan for the good automatically, and when it does, life feels lighter. Gratitude also changes how you treat others. When you notice and value the good in your own life, you become more generous with your words and actions. You start to thank people not just for what they do, but for who they are. And that recognition, given sincerely, can transform relationships. People remember when they feel truly seen. Here's the irony. Gratitude doesn't mean you stop striving. You can still aim high, still work for a better future. The difference is, you're no longer running from a feeling of lack. You're moving forward from a place of abundance. That makes you calmer, more focused, and far more resilient when things don't go as planned. So the next time you catch yourself thinking, I'll be happy when, stop. Take a breath. Look around. Ask yourself, what can I be thankful for right now? It might be small, it might be fleeting, but that small moment is proof that joy doesn't have to wait. It's already here. You just have to notice it. Detachment isn't about not caring. It's about caring without becoming a prisoner of the outcome. It's the ability to love, support, and invest in people and goals without letting your identity or peace depend on how they respond or whether things turn out the way you hoped. Most people think attachment is proof of commitment, but often it's just a form of control disguised as love or ambition. You cling, you push, you force, and in doing so, you create tension, fear, and resistance, both in yourself and in others. The wisdom of detachment is knowing that you can give your best and still let go of the need to control what happens next. This doesn't mean you withdraw or become indifferent. It means you show up fully, but with the awareness that life has its own timing and rhythm. The Stoics understood this well. They taught that you control your actions, not the results. You control your intentions, not how others will receive them. And when you stop trying to own outcomes, you stop being at the mercy of them. Think of a gardener. They plant seeds, water the soil, tend the plants, but they cannot control the rain, the sun, or the growth rate. The gardener's role is to nurture. Nature handles the rest. Detachment is the same in relationships, in work, and in personal dreams. You do your part with care and integrity, then release the rest to time, chance, and the will of others. This practice protects you from the emotional extremes of life. When things go well, you can celebrate without becoming dependent on that success for your worth. When things go badly, you can accept it without collapsing. It's a kind of emotional balance. Your happiness is rooted in how you live, not in what you receive. Detachment also frees you from the exhausting cycle of trying to manage how others see you. You can care for someone deeply without making their opinion of you the measure of your value. You can pursue excellence without making achievement the condition for self-respect. You can hope for the best without fearing the worst will destroy you. One practical way to build detachment is to ask yourself, before you act, If this doesn't go the way I want, will I still be proud of how I showed up? If the answer is yes, then you're acting from alignment, not attachment. That's the kind of action you can release without regret. In truth, detachment is a gift to the people and situations you care about. When you remove the pressure of your expectations, you allow things to grow naturally. People feel freer to be themselves. Projects evolve without the weight of your anxiety on their back. Love, work, and creativity all flourish better in the space that detachment creates. And here's the paradox. When you stop clutching at outcomes, you often end up with better ones. Why? Because detachment brings clarity, patience, and resilience. You're no longer blinded by fear or desperation. So your decisions are wiser, your energy steadier, your presence more grounded. You become the kind of person who can handle whatever comes, and that's magnetic in every area of life. Harmony between action and acceptance is one of the rarest and most powerful skills you can develop, because it asks you to master two opposing forces without letting either one dominate you. Action is about moving with intention, creating change, shaping circumstances through effort and persistence. Acceptance is about recognizing limits, respecting reality, and not exhausting yourself by fighting what you cannot alter. Most people lean too far in one direction. They either push endlessly, wearing themselves down against immovable walls, or they surrender too soon, convincing themselves that letting go is wisdom, when in truth, it's avoidance. The real art is knowing when to step forward with full force and when to step back with grace. This balance begins with clarity. If you don't know what truly matters to you, you'll end up pushing in every direction, exhausting yourself over battles that aren't worth winning. Acceptance will feel like giving up instead of making space for what's essential. But when you have a clear vision of your values and priorities, you can see which situations deserve your fight and which ones require your surrender. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Action focuses on the mind's domain, your choices, your words, your discipline. Acceptance covers everything else. Think about a sailor at sea. They cannot control the wind, the currents, or the storms. That's acceptance. But they can adjust the sails, steer the rudder, and decide when to move or wait. That's action. The best sailors don't curse the wind. They work with it, and when it's against them, they adapt their course. In life, this means learning to respond instead of react, to change your approach instead of wasting energy on resistance. The danger of too much action is burnout. You convince yourself that effort is always the answer, so you keep pushing even when the cost outweighs the gain. You start mistaking motion for progress. On the other hand, the danger of too much acceptance is stagnation. You tell yourself, it's just fate, and stop taking responsibility for what's in your hands. Both extremes are traps. The way forward is to treat life like a conversation between your will and the world. Sometimes the world says yes, and you act decisively. Sometimes it says no, and you listen, wait, and prepare. The more you practice this, the more you'll notice subtle signs, opportunities that feel alive and aligned, and obstacles that signal it's time to conserve your strength. A practical way to apply this is to regularly ask yourself, is this something I can change through effort right now, or is this something I need to adapt to? If it's the first, commit fully. If it's the second, focus on strengthening yourself for when the moment to act returns. This mindset keeps you from wasting years on doors that won't open, while also preventing you from sitting idle when opportunity knocks. The harmony between action and acceptance is not about passively drifting or aggressively forcing. It's about moving in rhythm with reality. When you live this way, you stop fighting life and start collaborating with it. You conserve energy for the moments that matter. You recover faster from setbacks, and you carry yourself with a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you're not at war with the world. Freedom through self-discipline is one of those paradoxes that only make sense when you live it. At first, it sounds contradictory. How can discipline, which is about rules and restrictions, lead to freedom, which is about choice and openness? But the truth is, without discipline, your life is not truly free. It's just being pulled in every direction by impulses, distractions, and the demands of others. When you lack discipline, your time isn't yours. Your mind isn't yours. Even your emotions can be hijacked by whatever is loudest in the moment. But when you cultivate structure, when you set boundaries with yourself and follow through, you reclaim ownership over your days. Think of discipline as the architect of freedom. It's the structure that protects your energy, the framework that channels your efforts toward what matters most. A disciplined person doesn't waste hours debating whether to work, to rest, to create. They've already decided in advance. Their habits carry them forward. This is why the Stoics saw self-control as the highest form of power, not control over others, but over yourself. Epictetus reminded us that no man is free who is not master of himself. The chains that bind most people aren't physical. They're the habits and patterns they can't break. Without self-discipline, even your dreams can become prisons. You'll want more than you can handle, start more than you can finish, and live with the constant anxiety of unfinished tasks. But with it, you create space to think, to breathe, to focus on what you truly value. Structure doesn't suffocate creativity, it frees it. A musician doesn't resent the boundaries of rhythm and key, they use them to create beauty. Likewise, discipline gives your life a rhythm, and within that rhythm, you have room to explore without chaos pulling you apart. The process begins with small commitments you honor without negotiation. If you decide you'll wake up at a certain time, you do it. If you commit to daily exercise, you show up even on the days you don't feel like it. Each kept promise strengthens your identity as someone who follows through. Over time, discipline stops feeling like a cage and starts feeling like a compass, pointing you toward who you want to become. A life without discipline is reactive. You spend your days responding to demands instead of shaping them. But a disciplined life is proactive. You design it with intention. And here's the irony. The more disciplined you become, the less effort it takes. Decisions become automatic, and you're no longer wasting mental energy on constant choice. That's why truly disciplined people often appear calm. They're not scrambling, they're simply following the path they've already set. In the end, freedom isn't doing whatever you want whenever you want. That's chaos disguised as liberty. Real freedom is waking up knowing you have the time, energy, and clarity to pursue what matters most, because you've already built the discipline to protect it. That's the kind of freedom no one can take away from you. Compassion is often mistaken for softness, but in reality, it's one of the strongest forces a human being can embody. True compassion isn't about blind kindness or letting others walk over you. It's the ability to understand someone's pain without letting it compromise your integrity or values. It's the strength to remain kind in a world that sometimes rewards cruelty, and to see the humanity in others even when they show you their worst side. The Stoics saw compassion not as a sentimental luxury, but as an essential part of living virtuously. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that he would meet people who are selfish, arrogant, and deceitful, but he also reminded himself they act that way out of ignorance, not because they are beyond redemption. The danger, of course, is to confuse compassion with weakness. Being compassionate doesn't mean tolerating harm or excusing bad behavior. In fact, real compassion sometimes means holding someone accountable, drawing boundaries, or walking away. It is strength with empathy, not strength without direction. Imagine a teacher who cares deeply about their students, but refuses to let them submit poor work without consequence. That's compassion in action. It's the kind of care that seeks the best in others by refusing to accept less than their potential. When you combine strength and compassion, you become the kind of person who can stand firm without becoming bitter, and who can extend kindness without being naive. This balance protects you from two extremes: the hardness that shuts the world out, and the softness that lets the world take advantage of you. Compassion allows you to act from understanding rather than from ego. Instead of asking, "How can I win?" you begin to ask, "What will help the most?" And sometimes the answer will be a firm no. From a Stoic perspective, compassion is also a form of wisdom. It recognizes that we are all flawed, that everyone is fighting battles we can't see, and that cruelty often comes from suffering. But it also knows that enabling destructive behavior is not kindness, it's complicity. Seneca wrote that the wise person is kind without indulgence, a reminder that real care sometimes feels like discipline, and that refusing to help someone harm themselves can be the greatest gift you give. Practicing compassion in daily life starts with empathy, but it's guided by clarity. You can listen without agreeing, support without losing yourself, and care without sacrificing your peace. This is not about suppressing your emotions, it's about choosing them. When your strength is anchored in compassion, you can face conflict without hostility and loss without resentment. You don't need to crush others to stand tall, and you don't need to harden your heart to protect it. In the end, strength without compassion becomes tyranny, and compassion without strength becomes surrender. But together, they form a kind of unshakable presence, a way of moving through the world that inspires trust, earns respect, and leaves a lasting impact. The challenge is to carry both in equal measure, so that your power is never without purpose, and your kindness is never without protection. Most people live as if death is something far away, an abstract event that will happen someday. But that illusion is dangerous. It makes us waste our days, postpone what matters, and treat life as if it were infinite. The truth is, every second that passes is one you will never get back. The Stoics didn't avoid this reality. They embraced it. They practiced memento mori, the remembrance of death, not as a morbid obsession, but as a way to sharpen their focus on what's truly important. When you carry the awareness that you will die, you stop sleepwalking through life and start living deliberately. Facing mortality without fear doesn't mean you welcome death before its time. It means you strip away the panic and denial that keep most people from appreciating the present. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." In other words, the problem isn't the length of life. It's how much of it we spend on things that don't matter. When you understand that every conversation, every morning sunrise, and every chance to love someone is finite, you start to savor them. You stop arguing over trivial things. You stop holding grudges that only poison your remaining days. Fear of death often comes from two sources, the unknown and the unfulfilled. The unknown can be softened by accepting that it's beyond your control. The unfulfilled, however, is something you can address right now. If you died today, what dreams would die with you? What conversations would you regret never having? What experiences would you wish you had taken? These are the questions that transform death from a distant dread into a call to action. Awareness of mortality also frees you from the pettiness of ego. Many of the things we get angry about, someone's opinion, a social slight, a small inconvenience, are meaningless when viewed against the horizon of our finite existence. The next time you're tempted to react impulsively, ask yourself, if I knew I had only a week left to live, would this matter? That single question has the power to dissolve resentment and redirect your focus toward what truly counts. When you integrate this mindset into your daily life, urgency replaces procrastination and gratitude replaces entitlement. You begin to prioritize experiences over possessions, people over status, and meaning over comfort. The awareness that you could be gone tomorrow doesn't paralyze you, it fuels you. You take that trip, you start that project, you say, I love you, without waiting for the perfect moment. Ultimately, to face mortality without fear is to face life without waste. It's to meet each day as a gift you cannot return, and to make use of it with the quiet pride of someone who knows nothing is guaranteed. Death will come. It always does. The only question is whether, when it does, you can meet it with the peace of knowing you truly lived. Nature is the oldest philosopher we have, and yet most people walk through it without listening. Every tree, river, and mountain holds lessons about resilience, adaptation, and balance. A tree doesn't rush to grow faster than its roots can sustain. It trusts the seasons. It stands through storms without resenting the wind, bending just enough to avoid breaking. There's a quiet wisdom in that. Strength isn't about resistance alone. It's about flexibility when the moment demands it. In our own lives, we often push, fight, and resist circumstances instead of observing, adapting, and letting change shape us into something stronger. If you spend time watching the rhythm of the ocean, you see that the waves never stop coming, but they also never cling to the shore. They arrive, they leave, and the process repeats without bitterness or grasping. This is a reminder that life is constant movement. The good and the bad, the joy and the loss. None of it is permanent. The ocean doesn't try to hold on to a single wave, and maybe we shouldn't either. When we release our grip on outcomes, we create space for the next chapter to arrive without fear. In nature, nothing blooms all year. Flowers don't force themselves to blossom out of season. They rest, store energy, and wait for the right moment. This natural cycle teaches us that productivity and rest are not enemies. You cannot be in a state of constant growth without eventually burning out. Periods of stillness, far from being wasted time, are essential to your renewal. The Stoics saw this in the patterns of the natural world and used it as a guide for living in harmony with life's own cycles. Action when the time is right, patience when it's not. Even the smallest details of nature carry profound meaning. Ants work tirelessly, not because someone is watching, but because their survival depends on preparation. Rivers carve valleys not by force, but by persistence over time. The tallest trees in a forest don't compete to block the sunlight from every other plant. The ecosystem thrives through cooperation as much as competition. When you recognize these patterns, you begin to see that the principles for a good life are already written into the fabric of existence. Observing nature doesn't just teach us about survival, It teaches us about perspective. A mountain has been standing for millions of years before your birth, and will likely stand for millions after you're gone. In its presence, your worries about a comment someone made or a minor setback seem absurdly small. It's a humbling reminder that most of what we stress over doesn't matter in the grand timeline of life. To live with the wisdom of nature is to let life's seasons guide you rather than fight you. It's to stand strong when the winds blow, to rest when winter comes, and to trust that spring will return. When you let the natural world become your teacher, you stop feeling like life is against you and start realizing you're part of a greater flow, one that's been working perfectly long before you arrived and will continue long after you're gone. One of the greatest illusions in modern life is the belief that happiness lies just beyond the next achievement, purchase, or milestone. We tell ourselves, once I have this, then I'll feel content, only to find that the moment we reach it, our eyes shift to something else. This is the trap of endless wanting, a cycle that keeps us chasing and never resting. Philosophers across cultures, from the Stoics in the West to Zen masters in the East, warned against this constant hunger. They understood that when enough has no clear definition, the race never ends and peace always stays out of reach. The philosophy of enough isn't about rejecting ambition or living without desires. It's about defining a point where you can say, "This is sufficient and I can rest here." It's a conscious choice to recognize abundance in what you already have, instead of constantly postponing your sense of fulfillment to a future that may never arrive. The Stoics, for example, believed that wealth was measured not by the size of your possessions, but by the fewness of your needs. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." In other words, enough is not a number, it's a mindset. You see this truth reflected in everyday life. Some of the most joyful people you'll meet are not the ones with the biggest houses or the fastest cars. They're the ones who have learned to stop measuring their worth through comparison. They understand that comparison is an endless staircase. No matter how high you climb, someone else will always be higher. By stepping off that staircase and standing still for a moment, you see that your life already contains moments of beauty, safety, and love worth noticing now. Living by the philosophy of enough doesn't mean you stop improving your life. It means you stop letting your life be defined by the gap between where you are and where you think you should be. You can still pursue goals, but now from a place of fullness rather than lack. Instead of striving to fill a hole, you're building from a solid foundation. This shift in perspective changes the energy behind your actions, from desperation to intention, from chasing to creating. There's also a practical freedom in knowing you're enough. If you define what's sufficient for your needs, you're less likely to be manipulated by fear or advertising. You can say no to opportunities that demand your peace in exchange for more status or money you don't truly need. You can simplify, declutter, and focus on what truly matters. It's not about having less. It's about needing less to feel whole. The moment you embrace enough, the race slows. You begin to appreciate the taste of your food instead of rushing to finish it. You notice the warmth of the sun instead of scrolling past it. You stop sacrificing today for the promise of a tomorrow that's always running away from you. And perhaps the most liberating truth of all is this: when you know you have enough, you also realize you are enough. As you come to the close of this journey, take a moment to realize what you've done tonight. You've given yourself space to think, to breathe, and to step away from the noise of the world. In a life that constantly pushes you to rush forward, moments like these are rare and they are powerful. You've walked through ideas that have stood the test of centuries, ideas that have guided people through uncertainty, loss, success, and change. And now, those same ideas live inside you, ready to shape the way you meet tomorrow. Philosophy was never meant to be locked in books. It was meant to be lived. Every insight you've reflected on tonight only becomes real if you carry it into the small, unglamorous moments of life. The way you respond when someone tests your patience, the way you notice beauty in an ordinary day, the way you choose not to be shaken by what you cannot control. This is where wisdom shows itself, not in grand declarations, but in quiet, consistent action. As you close your eyes, remember that there's no final destination where you'll suddenly have all the answers. Life will keep asking new questions, and you'll keep changing in response. That's the beauty of the journey. You're not meant to arrive, you're meant to grow. And with each choice to be present, to stay grounded, to act with intention, you're already living the philosophy you've explored tonight. So let this be your final thought before rest. You have everything you need to face tomorrow with clarity and strength. The path ahead is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more fully yourself. And as you sleep, let your mind settle into the truth that you are already on your way.